Imagine discovering footprints in fresh snow. You follow them across an empty field. The tracks form a clear path through the white landscape. Everything makes sense. You can see exactly where the person walked, exactly where they were going. Then something impossible happens. The footprints begin. Not end, begin. Right in the middle of the field, no trail leading toward them. No sign of anyone arriving. Just footprints appearing where no footprints should exist. For decades, archaeologists faced a remarkably similar problem. Not in a snowy field, in North America. Because for most of the 20th century, researchers believed they understood exactly how the first humans arrived in the Americas. The story seemed straightforward. During the Ice Age, people crossed from Siberia into Alaska over a vast land bridge known as Beringia. Then they traveled south through an ice-free corridor that eventually opened between enormous glaciers. The theory appeared so convincing that it found its way into textbooks, museums, documentaries, and classrooms across the continent. The mystery seemed solved. There was only one problem. The deeper archaeologists looked, the less the story made sense. In the high desert of Central Oregon sits a small rock shelter called Rimrock Draw. Dust drifts over dry ground. The horizon stretches endlessly beneath an open sky. Nothing about the place suggests it could challenge one of the most accepted ideas in American history. Yet buried beneath the desert was a question nobody could answer. Because if the evidence found here is correct, people were already living in North America long before they were supposed to be. Before the route they supposedly used even existed. And that changes everything. For years, archaeologists believed the Clovis people represented the earliest inhabitants of the Americas. Their distinctive stone tools appeared across North America around 13,000 years ago. The theory became known as Clovis First and dominated American archaeology for decades. Then discoveries started appearing across the continent. Sites emerged that appeared older than Clovis. At first, many researchers remained skeptical. But the questions refused to disappear. Then came Rimrock Draw. In 2011, archaeologists began excavating the site. Their goal was simple: learn more about the people who once lived here. Nobody expected the excavation to challenge a migration theory that had dominated archaeology for generations. Yet, with every layer removed, the mystery grew deeper. Then researchers uncovered something unexpected: camel teeth. That may sound strange today, but thousands of years ago, giant camels lived in North America. Long before modern deserts became their home overseas, their ancestors roamed the American landscape. The remains appeared to show signs of human activity, evidence that the animal may have been butchered. Imagine kneeling in the dust as a fragment of bone emerges from the ground. Slowly, a picture begins to take shape. Not of an animal that simply died here, but of people living in this shelter during the Ice Age. If that interpretation was correct, the implications were enormous, because the camel remains were buried beneath a layer of volcanic ash. The ash provided a natural timestamp. This particular layer came from an eruption of Mount St. Helens more than 15,000 years ago, which meant anything beneath it had to be older, much older, approximately 18,250 years before present. Thousands of years older than Clovis. The team also discovered stone tools. One even contained traces linked to ancient bison. These were tools shaped by skilled hands. People who hunted, survived, and were already here. That creates a fascinating problem, because during this period North America looked nothing like it does today. Massive glaciers covered huge portions of the continent. Entire regions lay buried beneath frozen wilderness. According to the traditional story, the first Americans moved south through a corridor that eventually opened between these glaciers. Then the dates became a problem. Evidence suggested the corridor may not have opened until thousands of years after people were already living in places like Oregon. And even when it did open, it may have been one of the harshest environments on Earth. Imagine standing before a frozen landscape stretching beyond the horizon. No forests, no easy route south, only ice and wind. Suddenly, the old theory begins to look far less certain. Because if the corridor wasn't open, how were people already hundreds of miles to the south? That question transforms Rimrock Draw from an archaeological site into a mystery. Not a mystery about who these people were, a mystery about how they got there. But the route they were supposed to have used may not have existed. It's the archaeological equivalent of finding footprints in the snow before anyone has entered the field. The people are here. The route is missing. And that forces archaeologists to consider another possibility. Perhaps the first Americans arrived by a completely different path. Maybe they were never trapped by the Ice Age in the first place. Researchers began looking toward the Pacific. A theory known today as the Kelp Highway hypothesis began attracting attention. What if the first Americans never used the ice corridor at all? What if they followed the coastline instead? Imagine standing on the Pacific coast nearly 20,000 years ago. Ocean waves crash against rocky shores. Fog drifts across the water. To the east lies a frozen continent. But to the south, the coastline continues. Mile after mile, generation after generation. Now imagine small groups moving along that edge of the world. Fishing, gathering shellfish, crossing short stretches of water, exploring unfamiliar coastlines. Unlike the frozen interior, the Pacific coast may have provided a reliable source of food and resources. For people willing to follow it, the ocean may have acted less like a barrier and more like a highway. Suddenly, a new possibility appears. The people at Rimrock Draw may not have arrived through a corridor between glaciers. They may have reached North America by traveling along the edge of an unknown continent. A route that left far fewer traces behind. A route now hidden beneath rising seas and thousands of years of change. If that's true, some of the earliest chapters of American history may now lie underwater, waiting where archaeologists can barely reach them. Rimrock Draw did not uncover a lost empire. It did not reveal hidden treasure. What it challenged was something far more powerful: certainty. For decades, the story seemed complete. The mystery appeared solved. Then archaeologists started digging. And beneath the explanation everyone accepted, they found a problem. A very old problem. One buried beneath volcanic ash, stone tools, and the remains of an Ice Age world. Maybe the greatest discoveries are not the ones that give us answers. Maybe they are the ones that force us to ask better questions. Because the mystery of the first Americans may not be when they arrived. Rimrock Draw suggests they were already here. The real mystery may be how they got here at all. Somewhere along an ancient coastline, beneath rising seas and thousands of years of change, the first chapters of that journey may still be hidden. The first Americans may have taken a path nobody expected. And until we find it, one of the greatest journeys in human history remains unfinished.